Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, wherever you're listening from. It's me, Lisa, and this is Untitled, the podcast without a name. So, before we really get into today's episode, I want to say something that stayed with me after recording the last one. I was talking about social media. And to be honest, I don't think social media is a bad thing. I think the real question when it comes to social media is what kind of input are you feeding your brain? In my opinion, social media is like food, it's like nutrition. You should think about social media and the content the way you think about your nutrition. It depends on what you consume. And I think you can ask yourself that question, and if you're honest, you will find the answer. So, are you using social media for inspiration, for learning, for support, for help, for connecting with people? Or are you using social media to compare, to compete, or to get validation out of it? There is a huge difference. Since today everyone become an influencer on social media, and it seems like everyone wants to become an influencer on social media, I personally believe there is a big difference between influencing in a positive way and influencing in a not so positive way. So, influencing in a positive way is for me sharing inspiration, offering support and help, and offering guidance. Because some people out there really need guidance, they are looking for help. And the not so positive way is someone who creates content to get attention, to get likes, to get shares, to get comments, to maybe become famous. No judgment at this point. But I think you should be aware, or you have to figure out how you might want to consume these platforms and the content, especially if you know you are someone who absorbs a lot from what you see. And when it comes to comparison, I don't want to say comparison is always wrong. I think it's more about why you are comparing yourself, not who you are looking at. If you want to get better, it's a human thing, it's healthy, and it's good to look at people who are further along than you, quote unquote, better than you. People who are stronger, maybe more experienced, more successful, and whatever success means to you, it depends. Looking up gives you direction and it shows you what's actually possible. So, growth usually comes from direction, not from comfort and not from reinsurance. Period. I want to start here. So, I want to start talking about commitment. I want to talk about commitment not as discipline, I want to talk about commitment as identity. I believe people think they struggle with consistency, but what they are really struggling with is something I want to call a self-concept. Your brain is constantly building a model of who you are and not who you want to be. So that means who you repeatedly prove yourself to be in every action you take is data, and your brain is using this data. Let's say your brain is like a machine, like a prediction machine. Your brain observes your behavior and makes conclusions. When you say, I want to become more disciplined, but your behavior is inconsistent, your brain doesn't listen to your intention. And I think that's really important to understand. Your brain values coherence more than your ambition and more than your good intentions. Your brain would rather stay consistent with an old pattern, something familiar, than risk the discomfort of something unknown. Because something new or something unknown means uncertainty. And uncertainty to your nervous system can feel like a threat or like danger. And that means if you repeat something often enough, your brain will save this data, good or bad. Repeated thoughts get stronger, and repeated behaviors reinforce them. So let's say you avoid a meeting or you avoid a conversation, or let's say you want to skip something, like you want to skip a training session. Even with a reasonable reason, your brain isn't judging you, but it's updating. It's updating with new data. And it's updating the file with quote unquote less consistent and less committed. And that's where dopamine comes in. Many people think dopamine is about pleasure, but it's not. It's about prediction. Let's say your brain predicts you will follow a task, and you do. You get a small dopamine kick, not because it was exciting, but the prediction was correct. Simple as that. You said you would show up, and then you showed up, prediction confirmed, and the trust increases. That means when you repeatedly break that prediction, there can be no trust. And it's no longer about the task, it's about identity. Let's say objectively, avoiding a conversation or skipping a run, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. But something inside you knows it's not about today, it's not about the run, it's not about this specific situation. It will update the data. And when you show up anyway, especially when it's uncomfortable, something will shift internally and the brain will receive new data. And that's powerful information for your brain. That means commitment works through small, repeated behaviors that reduce internal prediction mistakes. Let's say it that way. If your intention and your action are in alignment, that creates a safe space. When your nervous system experiences consistency, it can relax. And that equals safety too. So sometimes we, as human beings, avoid commitment just because full commitment removes everything. There is no room for excuses. And if you commit and you still struggle, you have to face reality. And that's uncomfortable, right? Commitment isn't just about doing things, it's about staying, having this hard conversation, staying when doubt appears or when it feels hard. And in training, commitment is visible. You can measure stuff, right? You can measure pace, you can measure the miles, you can measure your training time, you can measure workload, you can measure your heart rate, you can measure everything in training. But in life, it's a little bit different. In life, commitment is not visible. It shows up as resilience, as emotional endurance. And we all know growth almost never happens in excitement. Growth happens in repetition, sometimes boring repetition. And when your own created bubble disappears, the bubble you live in, right? Commitment replaces this with reality, with the new feedback. And if you have listened to earlier episodes, you know what I mean when I say I don't ask myself questions at 3 a.m. when I get up. I just follow my routine, and that is not motivation, that is identity. So, what you can do is change one signal for your brain, make it small, make it simple, make it repeatable. You maybe remember the episode when I said I prepare my mornings in the evenings, right? Over time, your brain updates the model with new data. And I want to say something personal here. I am a very committed person. I'm not perfect at all, and I make mistakes, too many mistakes all the time. I can tell you that. And I hate it. But what I really know about myself is I'm committed. And over time, I realized something really important. I have clear priorities, and naturally, I go for people who operate the same way. I value people with the same mentality. You don't have to be identical to me. You don't have to share the same opinion all the time. But I value people who take themselves seriously, who follow the task, people who are committed. And I think being around similar personalities is less exhausting. That's how I feel. I think when you around similar personalities, it requires less emotional adjustments. And I think you have less conflict over lifestyle choices or even life choices. Let's say it that way. And that doesn't mean I cannot deal with different personalities, but it requires a higher tolerance for me personally. And I have to communicate differently. And I have to be more flexible emotionally when I am not with people who are, or when I'm with people who are not as I am. So, from my personal experience, I believe you cannot build a training environment or relationships with people whose identity is completely the opposite of yours. That's what I think. I'm convinced. When it comes to identity, when it comes to community, I mean, it's not impossible, but it's more difficult for you. So when it comes to identity, when it comes to community, when it comes to commitment, I think alignment really matters. I really believe that. So if one person treats discipline as optional and the other sees it as non negotiable, there will be a problem in training and in life. And not because someone is wrong, just because the foundations are completely different. And this isn't me judging anyone. It's about knowing yourself and being aware of how reality in life really works. So, if commitment is part of your identity, you will naturally look for it in teammates, in training, in friendships, in relationships, in partnerships. So let me ask you, what if commitment has nothing to do with motivation? What if it has everything to do with identity? Who are you based on your repeated behaviors, patterns, not your goals, not your talent, not your potential, just your repetition? What are you teaching your brain? And where are you protecting your ego by not fully committing? Are you afraid of failing or discovering the reality? Commitment isn't loud, it's something steady, and commitment beats motivation in everyday life and in training every single time. So, all I want to say is choose carefully what you repeat because your brain is always watching and it's building the next version of you. You don't need more motivation. You need alignment between what you say and what you do. And at this point, again, a quick shout out. There is another podcast you might enjoy. It's called Not Another Running Podcast. It's fully focused on running and training, and you can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major platforms. The link is in the show notes. I will talk to you soon.